I am so excited for our first panel today, to be honest with you guys. We have some amazing people. You got introduced to them yesterday. You got little tidbits, and you were able to connect and network with them throughout yesterday as well. But our first panel is going to be a hero panel, and I know you are all excited to hear directly from our heroes to help you serve and really support that community as best as we can. So our three panelists are going to share things that you've never heard before. It's really going to come straight from their hearts, and they're going to share some tips and tricks for you guys to get into the hero community. So listen very closely, get ready to take some notes. Please welcome up to the stage Terry Buxton, Jay Flynn, and Patrick Yoes. Good? Yeah. Not that far for all. Are we on? Perfect. We thought these might work better for us, so we can hear us all. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves. I mean, you guys are prominent in your own hero communities, and we've got healthcare, we've got law enforcement, and then we also have fire up here with us as well. So I'm just going to go down the line. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and what it is that you do, that'd be great.
So you want just my name or what?
Name,
Okay.
what you do.
Okay.
Chair of nursing.
Okay. Can y'all hear me okay? I want to make sure this is the correct level. So my name is Terry Buxton. I'm a registered nurse, and I've been practicing for over 40 years. Currently, my position is as the department chair at Metropolitan State University, as chair of nursing. And so my job now is to help produce our future nurses. And I wanted to let you know how much I sincerely appreciate every one of your efforts to contribute to this important organization. I don't know that you really, we hear all of the words, we hear the good things, but I don't think you really understand how deeply your work impacts the people that you are serving. So in essence, you are all heroes as well. We're moving into some unprecedented times in healthcare in which we are all going to be tested. And you will make a difference within the communities, because I'm just going to ask a quick poll here and then I'll stop talking. How many of you have a family member, a neighbor, or other relatives who is a nurse? Please raise your hand. Look around. Nurses, if you've ever seen a patchwork quilt, nurses are the threads that hold that quilt together. They are enmeshed and embedded within your community. And fairly soon, they are going to need your help, not just for home needs or refinancing needs, but in so many other ways that you will be able to reach out and help support them so that as they are taking care of others, you can help take care of their families and their needs. So anyway, that's my introduction.
Okay, this is why I'm having them do it, right? Yes. I could not have done that justice. So, President Yoes?
All right, well, I think most of you heard me speak yesterday, so I'll just repeat myself. My name is Patrick Yoes. I am the National President of Fraternal Order of Police. I've been a law enforcement officer for almost 36 years now, and I'm from New Orleans, the New Orleans area. It's called New Orleans. It's not New Orleans. It's nothing. It's New Orleans. And let me just tell you, and I mentioned it yesterday, tell you how my experience with Homes of Heroes started. And I get a phone call one day saying, hey, you know what, we have funds that we do through our foundation as part of our structure where we give back to first responders, and we know that you have a disaster relief program, and we want to provide housing assistance for officers, and we would like to be part of it. So before I ever had any discussions about anybody doing any business with Homes of Heroes, they were sending sending regular donations to our efforts. So you kind of won me over real quick, recognizing, who and what you do and how important it is. And it is, kind of turned into some discussion about how we can formalize a relationship, and it's something that's in process. And I would expect that this time next week, well, in about 8 days, I'll have an answer to that, and we'll have a good solid relationship. So I appreciate all that you do, and look forward to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right. Well, my name's Jay Flynn, and I'm the fire chief in Denver, North Carolina. I was sitting over here at the table with some folks from Denver, Colorado, and they had no idea that there was a Denver, North Carolina. So that hints my draw a little bit. So if you can't understand me, I apologize. But I'm the fire chief there, and I've been in the fire service for 28 years. I started as a volunteer firefighter, and then in 2003 transitioned to a career firefighting position. So that's one thing that I would point out to you guys. Around 70% of the nation's firefighting force is still volunteers. We can't overlook the career professional firefighters, though, as well. But we don't want to miss that volunteer populace. So that's something that you guys can keep in mind. I came to be affiliated with Homes for Heroes completely by accident. My wife and I sold our home, and we wanted to build a new house in the country. So the builder that we selected was affiliated with a lender who was a Homes for Heroes lender, Jamie Harrington from Hickory, North Carolina. You saw Chris accept some awards for Jamie. Jamie's about this tall, and Chris is this tall, so two different people. But so that's how I came to know about Homes for Heroes, was completely by chance. And the benefit was like, you're really going to do something for me with no strings attached? And then once that was proven, I was all in from there. And it's an honor to be here and be able to talk with you guys.
Awesome. These three are truly leaders in their own industry, so I'm excited to get your take on this, because we're always looking for ways to serve and support, and yes, obviously say thank you as well. That's our mission. But also often I think we aren't able to connect with those people that can see the challenges firsthand and that are widespread throughout a community. I know we've had the opportunity through a few success camps to learn straight from heroes like you what's happening in your industry and the challenges that you're facing, firefighters with cancer, and it's things we don't see, and it's not things that get talked about very often. So I'd like to kind of see what challenges are facing you at this current time, and maybe if you've got an idea on how we can plug in to serve and support them, would that be helpful? Awesome. Okay, Terry, you want to start?
Thank you. Nurses by nature are quite skeptical. Anytime that you offer to help serve them for free, it's a very kind, thank you very much, but no thank you. I'm sure many of you have heard that before. But nurses do need help. Many nurses today graduate with a lot of debt. And so to live the American dream of buying their home, getting the financing that they need, paying off their school debt is very difficult. The other challenge that we have is trying to educate more nurses of diversity so that nurses represent the populations of the people they care for. You see somebody that looks like you have a better trusting relationship that they're going to provide the care that you need. So many of these students are first-generation college students. And so having the funds to be able to go to school is difficult for them. And so one of the ways that the foundation could help nurses, and it's pretty atypical, is through donations to nursing scholarships. Because in our world now, so I told you I've been around for 40 years. And just before me, it was a generation of nurses who worked until they got married, and then they stayed home and they took care of their children. Well, that doesn't happen anymore, or very rarely. Nurses are working. It usually takes students at our school at least 6 years to get through school because of their work. They're working full-time. They have families to take care of. They've never been to college, so they only take a couple of classes at a time. But those challenges, don't let them get down. They keep going through. And so the support that you could give through those scholarship donations, many nursing organizations will have fundraisers. Nurses make terrible salespeople. We hate to ask for anything. We just do. Oh, I can't ask them that. I'll just buy all the cookies for, from the Girl Scouts who are selling them. But you're not afraid to ask. So if you can help raise those gift basket donations, so Will's story is part of the group in I remember where I am, in Denver. And he's with the HERG group. And so I've reached out to him because in May 6th through 13th is National Nurses Week. So if you know a nurse and you want to create an authentic relationship with that individual, thank them during Nurses Week. Doesn't have to necessarily be with anything. Just say thank you. But it's during that week that we have a large statewide event. It's also a nationwide event in which money is raised during that time for scholarships. And it goes to students in associate degree programs and in community colleges, at universities. It can go for continuing education. And it can go for returning back to school to get a whole nother degree, whether it becomes a family nurse practitioner or a nurse anesthetist or a nurse educator like me.
Very good. You want to go next?
Well, if you want me to tell you the challenges we have in law enforcement, you might want to, let's go get something to drink, get something to eat. Let's come back in here, and I'm going to take a couple hours to give you a little bit of an overview. There are three distinct things, and I think one of them I may come back and just finish up our segment with, so I'll save that one. But there are two things that one of them I'll do real quick, and then one of them I'm going to really get into the weeds and make you think a little bit. The one big challenge we have in law enforcement is there are people in this country who have thrived and have benefited in destroying the images of law enforcement across the country. They do it because it's their own whether it's political or personal gain, but they have created an atmosphere in this country where there's an us against them. And the reality is there are about 800,000 cops across this country that go to work every day defending at first line of defense in communities across this country, taking care of people they don't know, and all too often give up their lives for those people they don't know. And so we have allowed people to change that attitudes towards law enforcement, which is so important to us, and create an us against them mentality. And we've got to change that. The reality is the people in our communities are our officers. They live there, they raise their kids there, they send them to the same schools, and we are very much invested in the success of those communities as well. So we have got to push back on the narrative of us against them. I'll give you just two examples of what we're doing as an organization, as a profession. You might have seen that Starbucks had recently, right around Christmas time, they had an issue where one of their baristas once again made some derogatory comments towards a law enforcement officer that got on social media, and then it became this big thing where it's destroying their brand because people are seeing Starbucks as being a negative with it. At the same time, you have something that happens with the NFL where they take a position and they cast a poor light on law enforcement across this country. Now, it'd be real easy to curse the darkness, but we chose to light a candle and reached out to both of them. I met with the president of Starbucks just a few weeks ago, and we are going to be announcing a nationwide partnership that we're going to help them with their training, and they're going to help us change those narratives. Rather than arguing and fighting about these things, we're going to join hands and find a path forward to do these things. We're doing the same thing with the NFL. Interesting thing with the NFL is they ran a commercial. It was very derogatory towards law enforcement. So I wrote 2 press releases, and I got a hold of the vice president, and I said, this is what I got. I got 2 press releases in front of me. One of them says that, once again, you're really trying to destroy the relationships we build across this country, that, our officers are out there every day, fighting in the streets, trying to keep them safe. And once again, the NFL is imputing our good reputation. I said, so I got that press release. I got another one that says that I talked to you, and we're going to work together, and we're going to find a path forward, and we're going to inspire others, and we're going to light a candle rather than curse the darkness. And he says, man, run that second one. I said, okay, but if I run it and I start building a bridge across that river and I don't see a bridge coming back to me, well, guess what? I'm going to destroy you for having no credibility. So I ran that press release, and we're trying to schedule dates. This coronavirus stuff is going to mess us up a little bit, but you're going to hear, again, another partnership we're going to have where rather than taking a knee, rather than arguing about everything that's wrong with this world, then why don't we join hands and try and find some solutions to it rather than point out. It's easy. Well, I'm going to tell you, I've been a supervisor role my entire life. Don't ever, most of my adult life, don't come in my office and tell me what's wrong. Tell me how we're going to fix it. And I think that's a problem. I don't need somebody to tell me what's wrong. Let's find some solutions. So if you want to talk about a real problem, let's talk about solutions. What's our path forward? So I say that we need help. We need help in changing that narrative across the country. The other one I want to get into is I'm going to get into the Louise a little bit, and I'm going to be the downer here. But I just want to paint out, I just want you to understand the obvious. And this is where I think you have an opportunity. We lose a lot of officers every year, roughly about 150 officers every year in the line of duty. But we lose probably 3 times that at their own hands. And officer wellness is something that is, we ignored it. I can tell you my 35 years, I first started, you can't handle this job, just get out the way. Go get a job somewhere else, get a job at the grocery store. I used to heard it all the time. We wouldn't talk about those things. So what happened, we would never talk about them. We would just find a way to compartmentalize those things. And then what you find is officers that get in a really bad situation. We look at them as problem employees, right? Because things are happening, and so you don't understand why they're doing the things they're doing, and we want to push them off to the side. I recently had, back in September, I had an opportunity to testify in front of a House Judiciary Committee on police practices. And they gave me an opportunity. They opened the door. It was on something else, but they opened the door, and I pointed out something to them. And this is what I want you to take the takeaway here is that I want you to think about this. Some studies suggest that the average person in America will have 3 traumatic life experiences. Three traumatic experiences in their lifetime. And those 3 traumatic any traumatic event that you have is going to have both a physical and a mental a component to it, and it affects a person's well-being. And it's no doubt, it's proven science. Well, I want you to think about something. Every officer who's on the job today, every single one of them who's on the job today has done 2 things. They've taken a psych evaluation, took a physical evaluation. They would have never been on a job if they didn't. That's part of our hiring standards. The average officer will probably witness that maybe in a week, maybe a month. And tell me that doesn't take a toll on every one of them's physical and mental being. And when you end up with 3 times more officers committing suicide than you have killed in the line of duty, and it's probably much larger than that, well, let me tell you, we have a responsibility. We have a moral and a fiduciary responsibility to fix that which has been broken in the service of our communities. And as a country, we should be focusing our energy on wellness of officers, and protecting our investments. Recognizing that these people are putting themselves through something. Let me tell you what a law enforcement officer gets to do. They get to work for a lot less money than they can make in the private sector. They get to deal with the stuff and deal with people you would like to think that don't exist. They get the criticism across this country because people quick to blame law enforcement because we are low-hanging fruit on a tree, low-hanging fruit on a tree of failed promises. And since we're the part of government people can reach out to, we tend to take the heat for it. And for that, you know what we get? We get the right to be able to live probably 10 years less than the average person in this country because of the stresses of our job. So why do I bring all this up? What is your opportunities? I'm going to tell you what they are. We have a movement moving across the country when it comes to wellness. And we are in the forefront of trying to push that through Fraternal Order of Police, and recognizing that we need to take a holistic approach to protecting our members. Now, we can talk about the physical and we can talk about the mental side of it, and we're addressing those, but there is another side to that is extremely important. If you can't talk about a wellness of an officer without talking about their financial wellness as well. So all of our training that we put together, everything that we're putting across this country and coming up with this path forward to have this holistic approach to wellness has to do with financial training as well. It's all part of what are their biggest stressors? It's the inability to be able to manage money and make those decisions. So here you are, you're in a perfect opportunity to embrace it and be part of this movement across the country where it's being recognized. Last 2 weeks ago, I testified in front of the Commission on Law Enforcement on this very issue. talking about it. There are going to be financial resources coming for this very thing, and financial literacy is going to be a huge component to it. And you're all in a perfect opportunity to not just a job that you do, but also give back to the community as well and be a part of that.
Wow, that's a tough one to follow, because I'm going to echo some of the same things. So I've got 3 points from my fire, and I'm an EMT as well, so from a fire and EMS perspective that kind of echo what President Yoes had said about mental health. So we lose more firefighters and more EMS professionals to suicide than we do line of duty deaths. Very similar to what we're seeing in law enforcement, because we're exposed to those same traumatic events on such a higher level. For years, well, not for years, but the military kind of brought that to the forefront, and we're just now catching up. Our folks are going through a lot of very different experiences than our military heroes do, but out in the streets in the United States, law enforcement, fire, and EMS are experiencing some of those same style of traumatic events. So that mental health piece is huge. Many areas across the country are putting in place peer support teams. We used to do a lot of critical incident stress management debriefings. Now we're seeing that peer support group, having somebody to sit down and talk to that recognizes the same things you're recognizing. And that can go across law enforcement, EMS, fire professions, to where we can just talk about those things. So that is definitely an opportunity that you guys have to get involved locally in your regions, in your states, to seek out those peer support groups and ask what you can do to help with that. The other piece that we're seeing is a huge retention and recruitment issue with the fire service, whether it be in volunteerism. Volunteerism is dying in the United States. Around 70% of your firefighters, like I mentioned, are volunteers, and we're seeing that decline. So that's pushing costs up from the professional side, because we're having to hire people because of the lack of volunteers. So a lot of communities through the International Association of Fire Chiefs are doing recruitment events. So that's a place that you can plug in as well to try and help get the word out. And even on the hiring side of it, as he mentioned, folks can work in the private sector for quite a bit more money than they can in emergency services. So we're seeing a lot of challenges getting new applicants to come in, even when we're trying to hire them. So that's a huge difficulty for us. And then finally, as Abby mentioned, the emerging cancer crisis in the fire service. So everything in this room is not what it used to be, right? Everything's made up of plastics and chemicals and so on and so forth. So it burns so much hotter, so much faster, and with so many more carcinogens than were in the what they call the legacy style homes from the 60s and 70s. So we're getting exposed to a lot more harmful items in the environments when we do have fires. So decontamination, better screenings, that's something that is coming to light through us. A lot of your local hospital systems and the nurses are starting screening programs for the fire service, to where they'll come out and do free skin cancer assessments, or they'll do throat and mouth assessments for us for free. So that partnership is great. So that's another area that you may could get involved in helping to sponsor something like that, or host an event in your region. But cancer is going to be huge. For years and years and years, the number one line of duty death was heart attack and stroke. And cancer is going to take that over very quickly.
Yeah. It's really interesting to see how much you guys kind of weave together, although they're very different professions. First of all your responses were coming together, right, as a community, which is what we're all here about, but how much you help fire and law enforcement, and the same goes back. It's just kind of, like you said, like a quilt.
Yes.
Right? I'm going to thank you for being vulnerable. Like, I know it's not a topic we tend to share openly, but it's helpful to know, and information is power. It's helpful for us to know where to kind of plug in. So I want to take that conversation one step deeper to see where it is that we can plug in to help, whether it's financial. I know you've got in a crisis right now that we're experiencing that our nurses are going to need help with, where we can kind of plug in to help out. If you've got specific groups, I know President Yoes, you're a bit unique because you have your own group with the FOP that we can really plug into, but what are those either nonprofits, what are those things that we can do, what are those groups that we can plug into to help in the challenges that you're seeing? So, you want to start?
Sure. When you create an authentic relationship with healthcare providers, and goes beyond nurses because there are a lot of people in healthcare who really do help patients. It's a community effort of interprofessionals. That could be physical therapists, doctors, nurses, nutritionists, etc. It's a team effort. And creating those authentic relationships is reaching out to those people during the times of need. So I mentioned earlier with the coronavirus 19, COVID-19, is that many nurses and other healthcare providers are going to be spending much longer hours away from their families. So if you know these nurses personally, develop the relationship of saying, what do you need and how can I help for these little things? Do you need me to go run some tasks for you? Do you need me to run to the grocery store for you and pick up some things that you might need for your family? Do you need me to go pick up your kids after school? Whatever those small needs are, build up. They won't forget that you have been involved to help them so that they can concentrate on caring for those that are sick. When you do that, after this crisis is done, you can reach out to them and say, you know, I'd like to be able to offer a benefit to all of your nurses where you work or all of the healthcare providers where you work. And I can do this in being able to help those who want to purchase homes or those that want to refinance homes or whatever combination thereof. Let me talk to somebody in HR. And just like I did, because my introduction to Homes for Heroes was very much like Jay's and Patrick's. Steve Blackwell called me, said, we want to give your organization an award. We don't really recognize as nurses very often, and we want to give you some money. And I said, that's very nice, Steve. And I promptly ignored his email. But Steve, being Steve, didn't quit. Sent me another email. And as polite as I've been raised, it was like, okay, well, I'll call him and tell him thank you, but no thank you. And he said, well, check out our website. And I did. And sure enough, you all are a very legitimate, highly respectable organization. We just don't know it. Creating that authentic relationship then allowed me to reach out and work with Will Story from the Hurt Group. He came to our annual convention, which is the Colorado Nurses Foundation. I'm a member of the American Nurses Association. It's hard to get into those national organizations unless you really know the right people to talk to. But at those state events or even at those local events, talk to the nurses. Say, are you members of organizations? Can we come sponsor a booth? Can we come talk to your members who were there? It's usually not very expensive at those lower levels, especially if it's in small rural communities. How many of you have territories that encompass rural areas? Okay. So one of the things that you can do that would make a difference is that in rural communities, it's very hard to get health care providers to come out to where they are, in those hospitals. If students go out there, they're oftentimes driving 2.5, 3 hours one way to get there, do a 10-hour or 12-hour rotation, and then drive back. What would it be like if you could work with those community partners to find some houses that the community could help purchase and maintain for those traveling students and traveling nurses, so now they can stay longer in those areas? Could you find a way to help with the financing? Could you find a way to help them purchase the real estate that they need? I know this works because my son-in-law, when he was living in Lincoln County, about 2.5 hours outside of Denver, purchased some townhomes, rehabbed them, rented them out to the hospital so that their traveling nurses could come and live and stay there so that they could perform a number of shifts, and then the next group could come in. And then that helped keep a stable workforce. It also employed hospital staff, cleaning staff that could help maintain those. And then when he moved, he sold that to the hospital that has continued to maintain that. Those kinds of creative strategies with your expertise in real estate and financing, find ways to help those communities in need, because it can be done.
Wow, very good. Yeah, there's so much we can do on like a smaller scale, like you said, just showing up in times of need for the nurses that we know. I think everybody's hand was raised when you asked that question in the beginning. So we all know people that we can show up for, especially over these next few weeks or few months or whatever this ends up looking like. And then big picture too, I love the idea of helping with housing, right? This is absolutely an area that we can all plug into. We're experts in this arena. It's not necessarily you having to fund it, but you can connect the dots and connect the people and showing up and again, helping our communities come together and serving our nurses. So I love your ideas. Very cool. Patrick?
All right, well, I think what I'm going to do is set up where I'm going with this by repeating something I said yesterday. You know, at the end of the day, it's not the products we produce or it's not the services we provide. It really is a relationship we build around every one of them that's going to carry us through. I'm a big believer of a butterfly effect. I don't know how many of you saw the movie with Ashton Kutcher, Butterfly Effect. I hated it. It never ended. It never ended. But you couldn't stop but thinking of how you can change one small thing and how it had an effect, either a positive or negative quality from those actions. So we really get to decide whether or not we're going to be a positive or a negative butterfly effect. And at the end of the day, when we miss the mark, those are the things that carry us through. I say that only because I want to set something up. You've been here for, 2 days, 3 days now? How many of y'all been watching the news? How many of you are lucky enough to not watch the news? How many of you are aware of what's going on in this country right now today? So let me tell you what just happened. I'm going to use the airline rule for you. Do you know that before an airliner can take off, before it is permitted to take off, it has to have clearance because everything has to be fine at the airport where it's taken off. It has to have a flight plan that's going to get it to a specific location in a specific time, and they have to have a window where clear of weather for that plane to be able to land before it will ever get clearance to take off. That's just the way airline industry works, and that's why you have all the delays, because things along that route don't fit. Well, let me just tell you what happened 2 days ago. We had a plane take off. It's called our response to coronavirus. We put into effect a number of things that were going to happen that were launched when the president made a State of the Nation address and put some things in effect that caused a cause and effect of a whole bunch of things to happen. And that plane took off, and it didn't have a place to land. Now it's circling around, and it's going to fly around for a while, and we haven't even started building a runway yet. And that's the fact. The fact is that the things that are going to trigger the retracting, the things that have been put in motion, they don't exist yet. So we're in for a time right now where our nation is going to be in flux. We don't know what it's going to be. It's going to affect our markets. It's certainly going to affect people who are working. And all of these things all have a cause and effect, right? All of them. So I'm going to go back to how I started before. We don't know what the market's going to do. We know that it tanked. We know it came up a little bit this morning. We know it's going to bounce around, but I'm going to just be honest with you. I think we're looking 3 to 6 months before we're going to see any relief, and I think I might be a little optimistic on that. I think we're in some very difficult times. We're in uncharted territories. You got to go all the way back to, I think, 1915, since the last time we had a pandemic. There's a lot of issues that we're all going to have to deal with, and we got an opportunity here. You know, I've always said, look, whatever skill set you have, a catastrophe or a disaster is just going to magnify it. So you can either feel sorry for ourselves and we could say this is a shame and his world's falling apart, or we can find a way to be part of some positive change. It goes back to those relationships. What is your next transition? I sat listening to the class yesterday, and it was talking about all those transitions of businesses that made it and were able to identify opportunities. Well, you know what? This is when you should be doing your work. Yeah, this is probably going to affect the market. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I just lived long enough to know how things work, and I can tell you that you've got an opportunity here. And you can either say, you know what, these is going to be some lean times for us, or you also could start looking for that next transition, finding a way to be some positive, and to be able to have some positive influence in people and build those relationships at a time when they're probably going to be struggling. And if you build those relationships at a time when they're struggling, you've got an opportunity when things start coming back. Because when they do start coming back, they're going to come back pretty strong. So that would be my takeaway from that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the relationships you build now in the bad times are going to build the foundation for those relationships during the good times. So from the perspective of the fire service, I would encourage you guys to get involved locally. I know your Homes for Heroes team is working to try and push from the top down to help you guys out, but locally, find out who your local union president is within your fire department. And if they're not a professional fire department, find out who your county association president is. Those are the people that you can get in contact with that can kind of get you introduced. Here again, I heard it yesterday from Mr. Gonzalez, I believe. You're not going in there to try and sell them something right off the bat because you're going to turn people off if you do that. I think that attitude of service and gratitude is definitely the right route to get in front of those folks. Regionally, in many places, you have regional fire and EMS associations, so that's another place. I know in my conversations with several of you, everyone wasn't aware of those that existed or how to find out that those exist. I think if you can get plugged in locally with your local county or your local IFF group, you can find out what those regional events are and how you can participate and how you can plug into those. And then at the state level, most of the states have a state chiefs association and a state firefighters association and a state EMS association. Those are some opportunities that maybe you could partner with other Homes for Heroes affiliates across your state and do something at those style events, because I attend those events. I've never seen a Homes for Heroes booth. So I did see a real estate group at last year's North Carolina event, but they were just there because out of the goodness of their heart, they wanted to come and do something nice for the firefighters. And I was like, you need to look up Homes for Heroes on the website and become an affiliate. So I think those personal relationships, like we've talked about, even in the bad times, will help you to build that long-term positive.
Wow, some good nuggets in there. And lots of acronyms. I'm sure that's going to be used up here in my next question. I think from an actionable standpoint, it's really important for our people to know the groups and or the person with the right title, because, I mean, just in dealing with you guys, it's so hard to navigate your profession and who are the people or the groups that we should be connected to in making a difference or in making an impact. So I'm just going to go back down, if that's all right, and say, what's one organization or group that our people need to get plugged into where we can make an impact and help? Okay. Or just show up? And then who, if you have one person that we should really speak to get in front of people and help out, who would that be?
Every state has a nursing organization within it. All you have to do is Google your state and just type in nursing association, and you'll see a whole list of everything from like the Colorado Nurses Association to the local chapter of emergency department nursing, neonatal nursing. I mean, there's all different kinds of professional associations right at your state and local level. Contact the executive director of the state, just like Steve contacted me and said, hey, I'd like to get a chance to know you before you're selling anything, before you're talking about the program and the benefits that you have to offer, that could then in turn be offered to their members. And if they're not the right person, who within their organization, usually if you're trying to work with a foundation to set up some scholarship funds locally, who would be in that nursing foundation that you could reach out to? And the magic words are, I want to create a scholarship for. Okay? This is what I did with help with the HURT group. And then I took them to our HR department where I work and said, we have lots of people who move into Denver, and Denver is a very challenging home market because of the skyrocketing prices. How can you help faculty and staff who are moving to Denver to find the appropriate property of where they can live, where they want their children to go to school, et cetera? And so he's become one of 3 different real estate agencies and finance agencies that is now a referral source for him. And he just held a class called Home Buying 101 that was very well attended by employees that attend the university that I'm at, because we serve so many of the hero groups that you serve. So it's making those connections. And then asking, if you're not the right person, who would be a good person for me to talk to? Unlike nurses who hate to pick up the phone, you have a lot more gumption because you know how to reach a lot of no's first before you get to that yes. And when you get to that yes, use the connections of the nurses that you know to say, hey, can you introduce me to? Because when you do that, that's your source of credibility. You're not just a salesperson that is out there who is the unknown, but say, hey, I did this. And then nurses network among themselves. So if they've had the experience of being served by you as one of the heroes, they're going to talk about it. Boy, have I got somebody for you to reach out to. I heard that you were wanting to buy another home. I heard that you wanted to finance. I heard that you want to try and consolidate your debt so that you can lower your home costs. Whatever those things might be, you're the people that can help them. And once they understand that and know that, they won't leave you alone.
All right, I'm up. Well, we have, I mentioned yesterday, we have just under 2,200 individual lodges across the country. And lodges within a given state make up a state lodge. So it's probably the best resource to reach out to our organization would be just do a Google search for the state that you're in and look for the whatever state name is, Fraternal Order of Police, and that would be a good starting contact. But if you're more on a regional point, then I think what I would do is I'd reach out. I'd also do those searches for the cities or towns that you're in and see what connections that makes for you. That's probably your best place to start. I can tell you nationally, we're changing the way we market, so I think you'll see some pretty, we will see some pretty drastic changes in the way we get information out to our members using some technology that's going to allow us to be able to track what their interest is, and it'll allow us to be able to plug people in where it makes the most sense. But I want to, you talked about, what your opportunities, what you're in on the door. I'm a big fan of stories. Adults learn from stories. And so if you can find a good story and you tell that story, then an adult has a tendency to remember it. That's how we just process things a little different. But I'm a big fan of finding things that are successful and saying, okay, why is it? How can that work? And how can it correlate into our business? And so I use that as, going across the country, teaching about opportunities and the ability to be able to do some positive qualities. And one of the things that I always I like to try and bring home with them is it's all about, the companies that are successful have become indispensable. They've become indispensable because they found ways to provide something where their members or their customers are very much dependent on the ability for them, to stay connected with them. There's a reason, a continuous connection. So what is it? I mean, we can look at a bunch of different examples, but I'll use one of them. And I'm looking around this room, and half of you will know what I'm talking about. The other half will say, I have a clue what that man just said. How many of you are familiar with deluxe checks? How many of you have no idea what I'm talking about? How many of you even know what a check is? All right? Evolution has changed, but I want to use this as an example because there's a lesson to be learned from deluxe checks. If you have a checking account in a bank, there's a very, very good chance you have a deluxe check, because deluxe checks was a printing company who printed checks. First thing that they did was they took care of what was in the box. They made sure that they had quality service, and every person in their organization knew exactly how important a job was, from the person cleaning the floor to the person who was doing the typesetting to everything. They made sure they had a quality product. So that's number one. The first rule is make sure you got your shit straight, okay? That's a legal term, by the way. The second thing they did is they brought in a whole section where they went across the country to every bank and offered to teach the tellers how to detect fraud. They put all of their efforts in how to help a bank recognize how to protect the banks from fraud. Now, if I'm going around and I am giving you these things that are necessary for you to succeed, why would you not buy my checks? And that's how they turned into just a very, very profitable company until transitions brought it into electronic commerce and everything changed. Same thing with Dell computers. How many of you have a Dell computer? I remember reading an article, because I'm old enough to do this. I remember reading an article about this company that was going to have a computer in everyone's home, and I'm thinking, yeah, like that shit's going to happen. Yeah. You know what Dell did? They created a good computer, but you know what? It's not the best. It has the same processor every other computer has. They're all made by the same company in China. You know, the price was good. All of these things were good, but they had a good computer. You know what they did? Every advertising you saw when Dell computer came out at this transition, when computers were starting to take hold, Dell put all of their advertising in building a relationship on teaching you how to learn this new technology. It had nothing to do with the computer. It had to do with this journey you were going to take together with Dell. And as a result, Dell became the computer company that everybody, it capitalized the market. So why am I mentioning all that? Well, I think you got an opportunity here. I think that opportunity is you reach out and don't try and make the hard sell. You're right. We're very skeptical. You realize how many people want, look, I got 350,000 members. You know how many salesmen are banging on my door every day because they're going to save the world and make me a ton of money? I've been down that path. I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in beating my members up. I'm not interested in giving them anything other than value. So I'm very selective of what we do with them. I'm going to tell you what the difference is. You want your foot in the door? The foot in the door is to go ahead and make those relationships and reach out and ask to be part of some type of literacy training and help train members on how to make good decisions financially. If you do that, then everything else is going to fall in place and you're making people dependent on you. That would be my suggestion.
Did we just have a mic drop moment?
What's that? Oh, yeah.
And see, I've got to follow him.
The guy in the back would be really upset if I dropped this mic.
All right, so taking it back to that local level and who do you need to contact, your fire chiefs are going to be busy folks. I know I'm all over the place all over the time, but at your individual entities, your fire chief is your point of contact. Your local association, whether it be through the International Association of Fire Chiefs, which is the IAFF, so that's your professional career organizations, or your local associations. Many times they're going to use that same terminology, an association, whether it's a professional association or just a local association. So that association president is who you would want to Google and reach out to. I happen to be the local association president where I live, so I would be the person. And then as you move up, most states are going to have regional associations. And those typically will have maybe quarterly meetings. So that regional association president or the executive director of that regional association, and then that leads to your state associations. Typically they have a president and an executive director. Your executive director is going to be your full-time person that you can reach out to and talk to. That president is like me and has a full-time job and just does that too. So that executive director is going to be your primary point of contact for your conferences and your chiefs conferences and your association meetings and those sorts of things. So that's who I would recommend. Get in touch with those people. And you don't have to necessarily go there. If you know a firefighter, they know who their regional person is, or they know who their county person is. And that would be your foot in the door with those. And then obviously, as we move up into the national associations, it is that proximity of who you're around and who do you know that are part of those organizations that's going to help us get into those as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, you guys. We normally don't have such a powerhouse up here, and I know we're running behind on time. I am managing that, but I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity just to say some parting words, or if you've got anything that you'd like to say to our whole audience. I know they're open ears and everybody's leaning in, so any last words you want to share?
Just thank you so much for the opportunity to be up here listening to my stories and the needs of my fellow nurses throughout the country. We will need you now and into the future. And as I said before, I greatly appreciate your service to us. It will not go unnoticed. Thank you.
I'm going to echo the same and just, say, look, we're going through this journey we call life, and boy, it makes a whole lot of twists and turns, doesn't it? And sometimes the economy's good and we do great, and sometimes it struggles and we all struggle together. And I guess the message I have is that, you know what, at the end of the day, we're all in it together. Whatever it's going to do, it's going to do. And if you think it does it all on its own and we don't have any influence in it, then shame on you. I think we have that opportunity to be that agent of change and that calmness, and I think our ability to be able to reach out to people at their difficult moments and show them a path forward really what defines who we are. So I say you continue to do what you're doing, and always recognize that I mentioned it earlier. I mentioned it again. It is a butterfly effect. That butterfly effect is you change one small, tiny thing, and the outcome can have some pretty profound differences. And so the question is, what is that butterfly effect? I can tell you in the service industry, there's definitely a butterfly effect. That one simple, genuine belief in someone, they can sense that relationship. The things that we do that make them feel like they're valued. At the end of the day, when we miss the mark, because you know what? Guess what? You're never going to miss the mark. I mean, you're never going to hit the mark all the time, right? And what's going to carry you through at the end of the day is the little things that we did to make people feel valued. And so my suggestion would be is look, just be a positive force out there to make some good things happen, and let first responders, let the heroes know that you recognize what we're going through, you recognize our challenges, and you want to be part of some solutions to it. And I thank you all for your support and what you do. I can tell you our organization, I can point to a whole lot of people who have benefited from the support that you've given us already, and I look forward to a good, solid, strong relationship.
It's been a pleasure to be able to attend this with you, and I've got to meet several of you and listen to your stories about your business and what your challenges are, and that to me has been valuable for my role with Homes for Heroes on the advisory board. And I would be remiss if I did not also mention the foundation. The foundation is a huge piece on how you can build those relationships and build that trust level. And we have benefited locally from the foundation with one of my firefighters actually with a special needs child that had some needs. So that's a huge piece that I'm very thankful for, and thank you, Lisa. Thanks for coming. Yes, go ahead. And they essentially came to the aid when there wasn't another solution, and we were able to buy home therapy medical devices for a special needs child through the foundation. So it's been great for me personally to be a recipient of some of the benefits, and I know what it means to me, and I hope that we can help spread that word, and that's why I'm here, is to learn more about you guys and learn more about Homes for Heroes and what I can do to help to get the message out and build those levels of trust and build those long-term partnerships.
All right, well, our conference wouldn't have been the same without you three here, so thank you so much for being here and for your time and turning down the White House. I'll never be able to say that.
It worked out great because it got canceled, so it's
Let's give these three heroes a massive round of applause.
Thank you for checking out this great video from Success Camp 2020. Make sure that you save the dates of March 12th and 13th to attend Success Camp 2021, which will be hosted in the city with the best beaches in America, Clearwater, Florida. As we do every year, we'll be committed to making sure that Success Camp is the #1 event for real estate agents and mortgage lenders who are committed to growing their business by serving the heroes in their community. And make sure that you subscribe to the Homes for Heroes YouTube channel, where we publish great content to help you grow your real estate or mortgage lending business.